information. First, thank you very much for joining us today for an hour or so for a webinar about heat pump situation in Maine with presenters from the Efficiency Maine Trust, which is a statewide entity that, among other things, provides some subsidies to those who would like to have a heat pump. This program is being recorded, and so I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. And also want to make sure that this is a meeting and not a webinar. And the difference between the two, according to Zoom, is that when it's a meeting, people can see each other and people can see your names. And so if you wish to remain anonymous and not have people see you, please be sure to leave your camera off and turn off and change your name. Also, because it's a meeting, please make sure your microphone is off so that there's not too much extraneous background noise from barking dogs or etc. Okay, my name's Eric Howard. I'm the relatively new executive director of the E2 Tech Council. We're Maine's largest community for the environmental professions. We have hundreds of member companies. Our mailing list is close to 4,000 people. And we partner with many entities, both in state and out of state, to help advance the green economy and the community in Maine that's providing services. We convene meetings. We're a catalyst. We are also involved in thinking about resolutions of problems and providing nonpartisan information. Next week, we'll have, actually 2 weeks from now, we're having a legislative breakfast in Augusta with the head of the Department of Environmental Protection, the head of the PUC, Public Utilities Commission, and leaders from the Energy Committee and the Environment Committee. Good. E2 Tech, we're a nonprofit organization. We have close to 20 board members. You can see their names and affiliations here. We have a couple committees that are responsible for putting together our programs and working with staff on our programming. One of our board members is Michael Stoddard, who you'll be hearing from later today. As a nonprofit organization, our finances are open to the public for you to know about what we do and where our money comes from. Here's a little sort of quick overview to give you an understanding about where it's coming from. These kinds of programs, our workshops, our webinars, and our other convenings, it's about 20% of our income. We also have some grants and contracts, and right now membership is a significant portion. And on the expense side, you see that there. And I'll briefly acknowledge our two committee chairs for the programs committee, Dale and Vanessa. And if you have suggestions, you can reach out to either of them or to Jackie or me in terms of suggesting future programs, whether they be in person or virtual. We're particularly interested and excited to try and do some more programs outside of the what I'm calling the Portland to Augusta corridor. So trying to do things in the mid-coast region, down east, in the center of Maine. Last week we had a bunch of people getting together for a young professionals gathering in York County. So that's the E2 Tech Council. And now I will pass it on to our colleagues at Efficiency Maine Trust.
Thanks, Eric. And my name is Michael Stoddard. I'm the executive director of the Efficiency Maine Trust, and we have a full agenda that we'd like to get through today. So I want to thank E2 Tech for inviting us to talk about heat pumps and the technology and our programs. And I really want to thank everybody for jumping on this meeting in the middle of your day. So thanks. I hope that we have some useful and interesting information to share with you. Obviously, heat pumps plays a large and growing role in importance for our economy and our environment in Maine. We've been using a particular set of fuels and technologies to heat our homes and businesses for the last 100 years. It's served us very well. It turns out there's a new technology that seems to work better. It costs less to operate, and it's much easier on the environment. Certainly, it reduces our dependence on imported fuels, so it increases our energy independence, and seems to hold a tremendous amount of potential for our state. So that's why we feel really privileged to design and run the programs that are in this state to help accelerate that transition away from an older technology to something that's new and holds so much promise. So today we've got a couple of pieces on the agenda here. And that we're going to start with a quick intro and recap of what's been going on in our residential programs to promote heat pumps, and then follow that with an update on what's going on in our commercial programs to help heat pumps. So residential buildings, commercial buildings, and by commercial, we really mean anything that's not residential. So that would include local government, school buildings, institutional buildings. We have done some research over the last couple of years, and there's some really interesting findings that are coming out of that have been influencing our thoughts about how to design our programs. We want to share some of that with you. And then very quickly touch on an opportunity that will be coming out probably around this summertime with the delivery of yet another tranche of federal funds under what's called the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, or IRA. We'll just briefly talk about what the state is thinking of doing in that direction, and we want to alert people to the fact that there's going to be some opportunity for public comment on that in the future. So I want to finish these intros and then get out of the way so you can hear the meat of the topic. I want to introduce our panelists. We have Andy Meyer joining us. He's a senior program manager for our residential programs. Rick King is also here from who's a senior program manager for our commercial programs. And then Laura Martell is our senior program manager for evaluations, measurement, and verification, and has been overseeing a lot of the research and analysis we've been doing on how these things are performing and what we're seeing in the marketplace out in the field. So let's go to the next slide, please. And I should mention, I'm trying to talk fast, both because that's my nature and also because we definitely want to save time for questions and answer at the end. So we've tried to be mindful of that in preparing our slides, and definitely would encourage folks to think about questions they might like to ask during the Q&A period. And I will also commit that if we run out of time, which is likely to happen, please don't hesitate to send us your question by email, and we'd be happy to try and get back to you in writing. Okay, so a little bit of a trend. I mean, you're maybe wondering, are heat pumps a big deal or not such a big deal in Maine? They are growing to be a very big deal. This is the trajectory of market uptake over the last 6 years. You can definitely see a positive growing line, and this is showing a number of things, but maybe most important of which is they seem to be working. Why do I say that? Because if they weren't working by this much time in the field, word would have gotten out that they don't work so great, and we don't think that those numbers would be climbing as they have been. So it's also encouraging a lot of activity in the contractor community and a lot of word of mouth, which is one of the most powerful marketing tools there is. Part of what you're going to hear this afternoon is about some design changes we've made to the program as we've started to shift our attention to some of the heavier lifting that needs to be done as we convert our programs from focusing on just onesies and twosies to entire buildings and entire homes. And that's a big part of our focus going forward. So we understand there's going to be a little bit of a shift in the marketplace, but we're excited about the advantages that we think that will bring. Let's go to the next slide. This is my lame attempt to visually convey how much growth there is in the market in terms of different models. I like to say these heat pumps now come in all shapes and sizes. We're mostly familiar with the mini split heat pump where there's a little compressor on a stand outside your window, and then there's a head on the inside. You see that in the upper right hand corner in this picture. But they come in all different shapes and sizes now. So we're seeing them in school buildings, we're seeing them in hospital buildings, we're seeing them in office buildings, we see them in multifamily apartment buildings, and obviously homes all across the state, mobile homes as well. So they're coming out, the manufacturers are coming out with more and more models, which is giving us more and more ways that we can serve customers and find different applications that are going to be a good fit for their building. Next slide, please. Yes. Blessedly, we're done with listening to me, and we can kick it over to Andy to take us through some of the residential slides. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. We've been having a lot of fun with heat pumps. You just saw the adoption rate. We've been issuing a rebate every 5 or 6 minutes. It's the most rapid adoption of new technology since the CFL light bulb. I'm going to go over a couple slides. One is just to share with people how our rebates are structured, and then some of the details, not all, of the eligibility criteria. And as you can see here, our residential incentives are broken into 3 tiers based on income bracket. For low-income Mainers, which is defined as having someone in the household participating in Maine Care, TANF, SNAP, or HEAP, the rebate covers 80% of the project cost up to an $8,000 rebate. This is in addition to a federal tax credit of 30% of the cost up to $2,600. So it's a very generous theoretical maximum of $10,600 for a low-income family. That may be less likely that they would get a federal tax credit if they're participating in Maine Care, TANF, SNAP, or HEAP. But we're still talking over $8,000. Moderate income, which is most of Maine, is defined as having an adjusted gross income of under $70,000 a year for people filing singly and under $100,000 a year filing jointly. So again, that's most Mainers, and we've never had rebates this generous before. Our rebates will cover 60% of the cost up to $6,000, get that same 30% of cost up to $2,600 for federal tax credit, brings us up to $8,600. So, and then the last one is anybody else will pay 40% of the cost up to $4,000 rebate, same $2,600 for a total of $6,600. That is really powerful. If you think of a home that could possibly be heated by 1 or 2 heat pumps, if a given heat pump was $5,000 for each indoor unit, it'd be $5,000 or $10,000 for the heat pump. And you could see on a moderate income that most of that cost could be covered by either rebates from us, which is a check in the mail, or a tax credit. So this has been a big change for us. Before, our rebates range from $200 per indoor unit up to $2,400. So this is very generous. Let's take a look at the next slide and I'll go over some of the details. Thanks, Sheldon. The program's complex, and I'll be honest about that, but we did try to make it as easy as we could. The actual heat pumps themselves, they're eligible for our rebate if they're on the federal tax credit eligible list. So they're one and the same. If it's eligible for rebate, it's eligible for tax credit, and vice versa, trying to make it easy so there wouldn't be 2 lists. Another significant point of design here is while people are welcome to put in multi-zones that have 1 outdoor unit with multiple indoor units, we're only rebating those that are single zone. They have 1 indoor unit for each outdoor unit because we find they perform better, they're more efficient, and provide backup. And Michael points out that the tax credits I just mentioned are per year, and the rebate amounts that I just mentioned are lifetime limits. On the single zone units, they can be ducted. So if you think of a ranch home, for example, you could have 1 outdoor unit, 1 indoor unit, and you could have a duct to every room coming up through the floor from the basement, do the whole house in 1 indoor unit. But you can have multiple single zones if you want to, and the rebates will cover them. Because we're switching to whole home, we wanted to make sure that one, the whole home had ability to be heated by heat pumps or supplemental heat. So what we've said is that the heat pumps, in order to qualify for rebate, they have to be able to handle 80% of the peak load of the house. That's the heat demand at the lowest temperature of the year. And there has to be some type of supplemental heat. It can be heat pumps if you want, but it has to be some type of supplemental heat to meet the balance of the peak load demand. So 100% has to be handled by heat pumps plus something. And then the last criteria I chose to show up here is what to do with the primary fossil fuel space heating system. And because it's a whole home heat pump program, we require for the rebate that the primary fossil fuel space heating system, if there is one, there wouldn't be for new construction. We want to either connect it only to a generator or turned off with the power switch covered. Not locked, but just covered so no one inadvertently turns on their old system and misses the savings opportunity. And there is an exception for homes that have their domestic hot water heated by a central boiler. You can't if you turn the boiler off, you lose your hot water. So in that case, you can leave the boiler turned on, but just turn all the room thermostats off and off or turn them all the way down and cover them. Not locked, but just covered. So again, no one inadvertently reaches for the wrong thermostat and accidentally turns on the expensive fossil fuel system. That's the overview of our residential incentives. And I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Rick Meinking, for the next slide.
Thank you, Andy. Greetings, folks. Nice to spend lunchtime with you all. As Michael had alluded to, in the commercial space, there's lots of different building types with lots of configurations, and so to try and streamline commercial buildings to fall into this, heat pump only. When I say heat pump, I'm referring to these mini splits that we've all become very used to. Typically, those system sizes are less than 65,000 BTU per hour. In commercial buildings, sometimes you need bigger systems. And so the diversity that we've tried to bring into our program have been because we've listened to our trade allies or our qualified partners and saying, listen, these systems work really well in these types of buildings. How about investigating? So, a few years ago, we started to bring these online, and I just wanted to give a flare of what's available today. And mini splits are definitely in the mix and have been readily adopted by a lot of commercial building owners. Those come in multiple configurations, ducted, ductless, and a combination of the two. And so those make great solutions for some of our smallest buildings. When you start talking about larger buildings, we move into this VRF, or variable refrigerant flow heat pump system. The nice thing about these is they serve, medium to large buildings, and the power service to these buildings can be single phase or 3-phase. So there's a lot of flexibility in what the electrical system that is attached to the building is made up of. And those systems, employ much fewer outdoor units compared to the amount of indoor units they can handle. And so they make a great application in the medium and large type buildings. Then we have, specialty heat pumps that really have niches in different sectors, such as the hospitality sector, where these package terminal and vertical terminal heat pump systems come to play. Sometimes long-term care even have these types of systems. You'll know them. They're the ones that are under the window that, sometimes wake you up in the middle of the night because they're not as quiet as the mini splits or the VRF systems. But nevertheless, they do provide cost-effective energy savings for